Maria. I'm a science teacher and also a professor who focuses on science and science literacy. And I use reciprocal teaching when I want my students to be able to talk about a complex text. There are 4 components to reciprocal teaching: predicting, questioning, and also answering those questions, usually text-dependent questions that focus on the content at various levels of the text; clarifying confusing language, meaning of phrases, maybe even looking at a graph or chart and trying to clarify and understand the meaning of the data. And also the last component, which is summarizing, which is where you take a chunk of the text and you talk about what does this mean? What is the essence of what this chunk was about? So I mentioned that you do chunk the text. So students will read a section of the text, maybe a paragraph or 2, and then they'll have a conversation using all of those elements of reciprocal teaching to talk about the text. So it's a great tool for getting students to have a conversation that is in-depth. But when you're using reciprocal teaching, you want to really think about how you roll it out, what kind of text you're using, how you teach the thinking about the text that goes along with it, the metacognition. So oftentimes I'll model using a lens, a focus of disciplinary literacy, reading like a science teacher, for instance, in which I'll show them, well, sometimes when I'm reading a chunk of text, I'll look at a graph or chart, and then I'll go back to the text and I'll try to see how they correlate. So when I do that, I will use all of those elements of reciprocal teaching: predicting, clarifying, questioning, and summarizing. So I spend a little bit of time showing students how they can do that. And then I'll get students into groups, typically groups of 4, so that each one can have one of those roles to play. So somebody will be the predictor, somebody will be the clarifier, somebody will be the questioner, and somebody will summarize. And I'll show them how to chunk the text, especially in the beginning, and then they try it out. And I can support them as they're learning how to engage in their roles, how to talk about the text. Typically in the beginning, they'll take turns. The predictor will go first, then the questioner, the clarifier, and the summarizer. But after each student has had a chance to play all of those roles, I like to say, yes, you have a role. But if you are the predictor and you want to ask a question, or you need to clarify, or there's some insight that you have that would help with summarizing, you can jump in and do that. Because really the goal of reciprocal teaching is to get students to talk about a text, to think about it, to have an in-depth conversation with their peers. And as we know, when students can talk about a text, can support each other, can ask questions, can think about it in depth, as you would with reciprocal teaching, then you really go to a deeper level in terms of understanding.